The Westminster lobbying row. Labour accuses the government of corrupt behaviour. Boris Johnson had sought to overhaul the rules on MPs' conduct just as a Conservative MP had been found in breach of them.
The Prime Minister is trashing the reputation of our democracy and our country.
A cabinet minister has dismissed the row as a storm in a teacup ahead of an emergency debate in Parliament. Also tonight, the push for more people to get their COVID booster jabs amid warnings of a difficult winter ahead. Details emerge about the music festival tragedy in Texas. After 8 deaths, a criminal investigation begins. The call for democracy in Sudan, 2 weeks on from its military seizing power.
And for the third time here, he wins the Mexico City Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen's latest victory extends his championship lead over Lewis Hamilton. Good evening. An emergency debate on standards is to take place in the House of Commons tomorrow amid the row over the government seeking to change the rules governing MPs' conduct as a Conservative MP had been found in breach of them. Today, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, accused Boris Johnson of trashing the UK's reputation for democratic standards. A cabinet minister rejected that, calling the row a storm in a teacup. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
MPs are forever aware how many people don't much like politicians. It's why for so many who spend their weeks here, this row over the government's behaviour gets right up their nose, because it leaves a whiff of this being a self-serving place. For the opposition parties, it's also a chance to take aim at the Prime Minister.
Instead of upholding standards, he orders his MPs to protect his mate and rip up the whole system. Now, that is corrupt, it is contemptible, and it's not a one-off. And what makes me most angry is the Prime Minister is trashing the reputation of our democracy and our country.
At the heart of this is this man, the former Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson. He was found to have broken the rules by making the case to ministers and others on behalf of companies that were paying him. He was due to be thrown out of the Commons for 30 days and potentially face a by-election until the government ordered its MPs to back at least a delay to that and a review of the system. Then, under intense pressure, it changed its mind. Any review would not be applicable to Mr Paterson. Today, this Cabinet Minister said it wasn't about getting their colleague off the hook.
The vote wasn't to reject the report that had been put together. The vote was to establish an appeals process so that MPs in the sort of position that, yes, Owen Paterson was in, but others as well in future, would have a right of appeal. And I think that's right. It's still an important objective to have due process here, to have a right of appeal. But obviously we can only take that forward with the agreement and cooperation of other parties.
MPs will return here tomorrow and spend around 3 hours debating parliamentary standards. There is real anger on all sides about what's happened. Labour's Chris Bryant, who chairs the Commons Standards Committee, still wants MPs to vote to condemn Owen Paterson's behaviour, even though Mr Paterson has now resigned. Plenty feel there's something of a rebuilding job to be done here for the government and Parliament to restore trust in how this place works.
And Chris Mason's here in the studio now. This row is continuing for an uncomfortable length of time for the government now, Chris.
It is, and I think there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, opposition parties will seek to land blows on a government that's tying itself in a knot, and particularly on an issue, sleaze conduct, that has the capacity to cut through, to be noticed by voters. I think secondly, when there's something like this bubbling away in the headlines, it prompts other inquiries into similar questions about how Westminster works and in whose interests. So take the Sunday Times today, looking at Conservative donors and how many of them end up in the House of Lords. The party says that's because of their philanthropy, not because of their donations. But there's another thing that ignites anger at Westminster about all of this. And it's about the perception of politicians. MPs are well aware of the perception of them being venal, of being self-serving, in it for themselves. And whilst that is a gross caricature for most, this kind of thing plays into that perception. So what do we have tomorrow? We have this 3-hour debate secured by a Liberal Democrat MP, new MP, a former police officer. I've just been speaking to her. She says she can't believe what's happened in the last couple of days. And then on Tuesday, the Standards Committee, chaired by Chris Bryant, who I mentioned there, it is going to meet. It already has a draft report on MP's Code of Conduct. It will be looking at that, reviewing it in the context of what's happened in the last couple of days, and they hope to publish that report before Christmas.
Chris Mason, thank you. A senior UK medical advisor has said that we could face a difficult winter unless more people get their COVID booster jabs. Dr. Susan Hopkins from the UK Health Security Agency told the BBC that a growing number of elderly and vulnerable people who'd been double vaccinated were being hospitalised and dying with the virus because their immunity was decreasing. Alison Freeman reports.
Okay, if you'd like to come through, how are you today?
It's being called a national mission. The government says it's down to all of us to do our part to stop winter restrictions being put in place by getting our booster jabs, with health officials clear on the importance of the vaccine.
I think that we are seeing immune waning effects from the vaccine. We know that the virus is circulating at very high levels in our community, so unless people get vaccinated, we will have a long and difficult winter.
And the booster today is a Pfizer as well. All right.
And Phil is doing exactly that, getting his third vaccination 6 months and 1 week after his second jab.
It's available to have, there's no reason not to have it, and people should get it as soon as they can.
And other people here felt the same.
In March 2020 I went through treatment for breast cancer, so I'm really grateful to receive all 3 of my vaccines.
I was really excited waiting for it to happen, so I'm really pleased that I've been able to have it done.
We know that so far around 10 million people have taken the booster jab, but in the over 80s age group around 30% have not, and in the over 50s that figure rises to around 40%. But that's because some people in that age group aren't eligible yet.
We didn't really get going with vaccinating in earnest till end of January, beginning of February. And so if you put the 12 weeks between first and second dose, and then the 6 months, which is the important timescale for the booster, we're just getting to the point where people are starting to come through and be invited.
Young people are also being encouraged to get their vaccinations. Here in York, Eleanor, who's 12, was in the queue to have her first jab.
A bit nervous, but I'm glad that I'm doing it, so that we can get back to normal.
COVID cases are dropping amongst the young, but numbers are still high. And with infection rates rising in older people who suffer more severely with symptoms, the push to get people vaccinated continues. Alison Freeman, BBC News, York.
And in the latest official figures on coronavirus, just over 30,300 new infections were recorded in the latest 24-hour period. That means, on average, there were 35,362 new cases per day in the last week. There were another 62 deaths of people who died within 28 days of testing positive. That means an average of 168 deaths a day in the last week. Figures on booster jabs show more than 10 million people have now received one. That includes third doses for those with certain health conditions. The rapper Travis Scott has said he is devastated by the deaths of 8 people at his Astroworld music festival in Houston, Texas. The youngest victim was a 14-year-old boy. Police have launched a criminal investigation, including into reports that someone was injecting people in the audience with drugs. Nomia Iqbal reports.
Candles and flowers have been laid outside the festival venue in tribute to those who died. More is now being heard about those who were killed in the crush. The youngest was 14. Other victims have been named. Brianna Rodriguez, just 16, was a keen dancer. Friends are fundraising to pay for her funeral. Franco Patino, 21. And Danish Baig, 27, who died trying to save his fiancée.
I just want to send out prayers to the ones that was lost last night.
For the first time since the tragedy, Travis Scott addressed his fans. Appearing sombre and distressed, he reflected on what went wrong at the festival he founded.
I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening.
That's okay with you real quick. This was the moment a young woman took to the stage while the rapper was performing to alert a cameraman that someone had died in the crowd. The surge towards the stage continued, but the party soon turned into panic. The venue's first aiders were quickly overwhelmed. People were pushing and shoving to make their escape. Police in Houston say this is now a criminal investigation after suggestions of foul play.
One of the narratives was that some individual was injecting other people with drugs. We do have a report of a security officer, according to the medical staff that was out and treated him last night, that he was reaching over to restrain or grab a citizen, and he felt a prick in his neck.
Several people were treated with an anti-drug medication. As the memorial for the victims grows, so do the questions about what happened.
I was completely shocked because it was for about a couple minutes that I was seeing two bodies laying down right behind me. And the whole time I was just thinking that they were passed out. And then once the security guard was just right next to me talking to another security guard saying that he didn't have a pulse.
Investigators say they will find out exactly what caused the surge and who, if anyone, is to blame for the tragedy. Nomia Iqbal, BBC News, Washington.
The Prime Minister of Iraq has appealed for calm and restraint after surviving an assassination attempt involving an armed drone striking his home in Baghdad. Mustafa al-Kadhimi appeared on national television to announce that he was unhurt by the attack in the capital's fortified Green Zone. The explosion injured at least 6 of his security guards. Twitter users have voted for the world's richest man, Elon Musk, to sell 10% of his shares in his electric car maker Tesla. Mr. Musk held a poll asking whether he should dispose of the stock, which is worth around £16 billion, in response to the so-called billionaires tax proposed by US Democrats. If that plan becomes law, the Tesla boss could face a huge tax bill. The COP26 climate summit is entering its second and final week, with representatives of nearly 200 countries continuing to meet in Glasgow. Some agreements and pledges have already been announced. But ahead of the final stretch, let's join our science editor, David Shukman, who's live in Glasgow tonight. What will this phase be like, David?
Well, this is a really critical point where things become an awful lot more serious, because if last week was about making promises, the coming week is about seeing if they can be delivered. We've had a whole raft of initiatives from global leaders on curbing methane, deforestation, coal, and that has provided some very welcome momentum to the talks. But what comes next is much, much tougher, because ministers gather here to try to tackle the really tough political questions. For a start, how to turn those promises into reality, what kind of scrutiny to accept, how often their country's climate plans should be reviewed, every 5 years or every year, how much aid to get to the poorest nations hit hardest by climate change, and overarching everything, the key question, will this event mark a turning point that gets the world onto a safer path to avoid the most dangerous rises in temperature? And to help the process, from tomorrow, for the next couple of days, there's a bit of stardust coming here in the form of the former US President Barack Obama. We'll see what kind of difference that he can make.
David Shukman in Glasgow. Thank you. More protests have been taking place in Sudan 2 weeks after its military seized power in a coup. 2 days of civil disobedience are now planned by people angry at the army's action, which comes after a military dictator who'd been in power for decades was toppled in 2019. Now Sudan's civilian prime minister is under house arrest, and pro-democracy demonstrations are being met with force, as our Africa correspondent Andrew Harding found in the capital, Khartoum.
Anger on the streets of Khartoum today. Protesters blocking off neighbourhoods, taking big risks to show their contempt for Sudan's military coup.
Right now, a lot of blood, a lot of dead people. This military government is a killer. It's a goddamn killer for real.
The protests began 2 weeks ago when the generals seized power, halting this giant country's admittedly bumpy transition from dictatorship to democracy. So, which side will prove stronger, the army or the street? In a Khartoum hospital, we found an elderly tailor recovering from a savage beating by the military.
Good. Can I see your leg?
And this young student shot in the leg.
A lot of people were shot.
His message to the soldiers:
they're like animals. Maybe animals are better.
It's hard to find anyone here who supports the military takeover.
It's heartbreaking, honestly, to see those young people, the ones that have been killed, just for asking for what's rightfully theirs, for a free country with a civilian government. So for me, it's very devastating. It makes me angry.
The man leading Sudan's coup is General Burhan. His spokesman, an admiral, told me the military had done nothing wrong. You've detained the Prime Minister and other politicians. Your troops have killed protesters on the streets. Why on earth would the Sudanese people trust you for a second?
Time will show this was not a coup. We will hold elections and the military will step aside. This was simply a course correction.
But many people here are not convinced. Even at night, the protests continue.
The determination, the defiance here is impressive. And it's possible that Sudan's generals will back down under growing international pressure. But for now, this country's democratic revolution remains on hold, on a continent where it seems military coups are firmly back in fashion. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Khartoum.
And now to the sport, which is with Karthi Nanasegaram this evening. Karthi, hello.
Hello, Michelle, thank you. Formula One's Mexico City Grand Prix has been won by Red Bull's Max Verstappen, with Lewis Hamilton finishing in second place. The victory gives Verstappen a 19 points lead in the drivers' standings, but there are still 4 races left in the final 5 weeks of the season. Our correspondent Natalie Perks reports.
In this make-or-break race, a good start was essential for Lewis Hamilton.
It's lights out and away we go here.
But the first few corners in Mexico usually provide fireworks, and this time was no different.
Verstappen is into the lead!
A nightmare start for Mercedes saw Bottas in a spin, and Hamilton stuck behind the one man he had to beat. And as he complained about his tyres, Red Bull's local hero, Sergio Perez, was gaining on him. After both Hamilton and Verstappen had stopped, it was Perez who briefly led his home race, revelling in the adoration. Meanwhile, sparks flew for Valtteri Bottas, just not in a good way. A day to forget, while his teammate Hamilton was coming under serious pressure. Hamilton just about managed to stave off the attack as Verstappen cruised to a dominant victory.
He wins the Mexico City Grand Prix!
But there was no doubt who was the crowd's winner. Sergio Perez, the first Mexican to finish on the podium here. Fiesta time. Natalie Perks, BBC News.
It's time to pop out of the room if you don't want to know today's football results, as Match of the Day 2 and sports scene in Scotland follow soon on BBC One. Aston Villa have sacked their manager, Dean Smith, after their 5th league defeat in a row. Smith leaves with Villa in 17th place in the Premier League. Well, the West Ham manager, David Moyes, was delighted with his side's 3-2 win over Liverpool, which ends their 25-game unbeaten run. West Ham move above Liverpool into 3rd place. Mikel Arteta celebrated his 100th game as Arsenal's manager with a 1-0 defeat over Watford. The other 2 games ended in a draw. Rangers are 4 points clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership after a 4-2 win over Ross County. Celtic are in 2nd place. They beat Dundee 4-2. Scotland have made an unbeaten start to Rugby Union's Autumn Nations Series, beating Australia in a tight contest 15 points to 13 to follow up on last week's success against Tonga. It's Scotland's third consecutive victory over Australia. Joe Linsky reports.
Murrayfield's at its most intense again, every seat full, and hoping Scotland keep beating the best in the world. The confident Australia had won their last 5 in a row, but soon Edinburgh in November felt a long way from home. Hamish Watson barged in the first try. When Australia were last here, they let in 50 points, but this year's Wallabies are recharged. Key to their resurgence is a new coaching team. 3 of them left Scotland's setup to join the Aussies, and some here won't forget. This game was in the balance when the ball came to a debutant. Ewan Ashman had come in on the front row of the scrum. Here he was, ball on the ground and feet in the air, a finish like a winger. It took one more kick to seal a famous win, and with the noise back at home, Scotland have shown they belong in World Rugby's top tier. Joe Linsky, BBC News.
England's women had another record win over world champions New Zealand, beating them by 56 points to 16, as Joe Curry reports from Franklin's Gardens.
The world champions, reeling from last week's record defeat to England and expected to respond with fire. Their pre-match hackers showing their intent, but could they deliver revenge? It was England who dominated early on, a huge maul, with Amy Cockayne touching down to set the tone. As minutes later, they were in again, Ellie Kildunn crossing the line, finding the holes in New Zealand's defence. 2 more tries before the break meant England went in at half-time with a well-deserved lead. A change of ends, but no change of pace from England. Cockayne with her hat-trick. The second half barely underway, the Red Roses in full control. The visitors did make it onto the scoreboard in the second half, including this walk-in from Portia Woodman, but that good work was undone by their errors, at times gifting England chances, who were only too happy to take advantage. With Abby Dow signing off a memorable afternoon with an outstanding individual effort. A year out from the World Cup, England in dreamland. New Zealand once again stunned.
So for the second weekend in a row, England have demolished the Black Ferns and in doing so cement their place at the top of the world rankings. Next up they host Canada, where fans will be hoping for more of the same. Joe Curry, BBC News, Northampton.
And Wales women beat Japan by 23 points to 5 in their Rugby Union International. Mishal.
Kathy, thank you. A first look at tomorrow's newspapers is coming up on the BBC News channel, but on BBC One it's time now for the news, wherever you are. Good night.